You've called so many massive European Cup and Champions League matches. There's Liverpool's miracle in Istanbul in 2005, coming back from 3-0 down to defeat Milan. Uh, I've seen you talk about, Barcelona's tiki-taka destruction of Manchester United as perhaps the greatest performance. This might be like asking you to choose your favorite child, but do you have a favorite final that you were party to?
Well, that 99 final was the most important to my career for the reasons that I've already stated. I was very fortunate to work for a channel during the noughties that had the exclusive UK rights to the Champions League. And so the final that Manchester United won, we've just talked about, the final that Liverpool won in 2005 in Istanbul, the final that Chelsea won in Munich in 2012, were exclusive to our channel, and they were huge audiences. I mean, a UK television audience of 20 million or more is very, very large. This is only a nation of 60 million people. So when you got 20 million plus, nearly everybody is watching, and we can only work with the material that we're given by live sport. And when the material is Manchester United scoring twice in extra time to complete a treble, Liverpool scoring 3 times in the space of 7 minutes to come from 3-0 down, Chelsea beating Bayern in Munich with, again, another last-minute equaliser from Drogba, and then a penalty shoot. I mean, you should not fail with that kind of material. So those were probably the 3 most memorable games. If I was to pick out one team performance, it would be that Barcelona win against Manchester United at Wembley again, strangely enough, in 2011. I actually came home that night, and I'm only a 45-minute drive from Wembley Stadium. And I sat down, poured myself a glass of wine, and I watched it back almost to check that it had been as good as I thought it had been, and it had.
I read in the Sunday Times, I believe, that in 1981 you were in Paris to cover the final, I think, for radio, and you had to overcome some technological adversity, and then you ended up drinking champagne with the victorious Liverpool team. Can you run through that?
Well, probably the biggest change during the course of my career has sadly been the decline of the relationship between the game and its media. And I think there's been an inevitability about that. And I'm sure people could relate to that within American sports. That the internet and social media have taken away a lot of our naivety, I guess. And in the 1980s, I was the same age as the players. They were my friends. I spent a lot of my time with them. I would often travel on the team bus to the stadium and stay in the team hotel with the players. It was an era when it wasn't unknown for the players to go and have a few beers after a game without anybody taking selfies and then publishing it in a newspaper the next day. And so I socialized with them as well as kind of worked alongside them. And yeah, I mean, when they all got back into the center of Paris, I was invited to the celebration, to join their wives. In fact, I knew, I often knew the wives and fathers as well as I knew the players themselves. And yeah, in the famous Lido Review Club, with the sort of kind of dancing girls and everything, just off the Champs-Élysées, I drank champagne with my good friends Ray Clemens, the late Ray Clemens, and his wife Fee. Out of the huge trophy that is the European Cup. That will not be happening whoever wins this year.
And at the beginning of that night, I think you said that a bulldozer had run over some power lines and there was a technological issue.
Yeah, I during the halftime interval, I actually had to climb from the press box area for the written press, where I'd managed to borrow a telephone in order to do a commentary because the bulldozer had gone through the broadcast lines. And I climbed breathlessly. I actually climbed over the live BBC television commentator I knew quite well at one stage. I can still see his alarmed eyes looking down at me as I pointed up to suggest that I needed to climb over him to get beyond him to get to my radio position at the back. And I arrived rather breathlessly. Fortunately, it wasn't a particularly exciting final because I don't think I had the I don't think I had a voice for about 5 minutes after I arrived in the radio position. But yeah, I mean, these things are sent to test us, I suppose. On a very somber note, 4 years later, I went to cover a Champions League final and ended up as a news reporter counting dead bodies. In Brussels at the Heysel Stadium. I'd never seen a corpse before in my life, and haven't really seen one since. And I just saw them literally piled up in the dust behind the stadium there. Again, in a different era where we didn't have kind of remote broadcast facilities where we could just go with a phone or with a microphone and start broadcasting live from where we stood. We had to go see, think, report, climb back to the commentary position, and then try with the greatest responsibility that you've got to frighten parents and friends and family waiting at home for news of their loved ones, to relate both the tragedy and hopefully the factual information. So yeah, this competition has taken me to all places, that's for sure.
One of the great goals of all time, and I think you've called it the greatest goal you've ever witnessed, Zinedine Zidane against a Bayer Leverkusen side, which, they're back in the big time now, but that was a great side. You can actually see Michael Ballack desperately trying to track back at Zidane, volleys it unbelievably into the top corner. When you see a moment with his wrong foot, with his left foot, if such a thing, if he has a wrong foot, when you witness such a thing in real time, you just have to react as a commentator. But are you thinking to yourself, I just witnessed something incredible, or do you not have time to even think?
Well, I had a mentor. I was very fortunate to have, funny enough, a boxing commentator. I don't know how many of your listeners would be aware of the late Reg Gutteridge, who was a very, very well-connected boxing commentator in the UK, but he knew a lot of the great American fighters of the 70s and 80s. Ali came to visit him in hospital, would you believe, when Reg was ill. And Reg was, it was tough love, He was, I didn't choose him, he chose me. He thought he could improve me. I got more criticism than I got praise. And one thing that he'd always say to me is that every goal, every great moment in football is different from the next and from the last. And your challenge is to try to find the words at that moment which captures that moment and will be a part of that moment for people's replaying and memory of it forever. And he'd say that the great moments deserve something better than unbelievable, incredible, fantastic. It's very difficult to actually come up with something that is unique and capture tomorrow morning's newspaper headline. He said, give me that straight away. I want to know what that is going to be. I failed it with Zidane. I said, fantastic. I remember my commentary because it's been replayed a lot. Reg wouldn't have been very happy with that, but it was fantastic. The great big looping cross came over from Roberto Carlos on the left-hand side. And as you say, he just looked up into the dark Glasgow night and trusted his left foot